Zoom, you can introduce yourself to us in the chat. Let us know where you're calling in from this evening. If you want to rep an organization, feel free to shout them out too. We want to see you in the chat. I see Baltimore's in the building. Bull City, shout out to the Durham fam. I see you, Atlanta. It's so many of y'all. Y'all, like the last number I got was that there are over 40,000 people registered for this call tonight, which means not only is it nothing but the devil's lie that people don't want to be motivated and organized and activated in this season. What I also know is that you take this moment very seriously and are coming not just for a pep rally, but also to learn from trusted leaders about what you might be able to do. So we're going to talk about that. But for now, I just want to give you a little bit of context setting. Then we're going to get into a conversation with a really, really special guest. And then I'm going to come back. We're going to get grounded and we're going to rock out the rest of the agenda for this call. So context, I want to let you know that people are watching here on Zoom. We max out at 20,000. So if you have homies who are still trying to get in, let them know that we're also streaming this on YouTube. So you can go to the Indivisible YouTube page and you can watch there. Please share that out, put that information out online, get it to our peeps. We want to make sure nobody misses this. I also want to remind you that we are recording this. So I know the chat is moving really quickly, and typically our action is to drop the calls to action in the chat. But y'all see how fast that chat is moving? Like I couldn't even keep up with that. So I want to remind you that this is recorded and we're going to follow up and send you information about how you can engage with the calls to action after this call. So don't feel stressed if you can't keep up with the chat. I want to let you know that closed captions are turned on. So for our fam that needs access to that, just look for the CC or show captions button on your Zoom controls. That's how you'll get them. So again, closed captions are turned on. If you need them, please use them. You're going to get a follow-up email from Indivisible with all of the information, the recording, and all of the calls to action tomorrow. So again, I just want to remind you, you don't have to be stressed out about missing anything tonight. We're going to make sure that we get that intel to you. This is a big call with a whole lot of people in a tough moment, y'all. On the mass calls that WFP and our sister organizations host, we often say that we can disagree without being disrespectful to one another. And you should expect that that's how we're going to roll tonight. But just in case, if you see any wild stuff in the chat, anything that's disparaging to our people or an obvious troll, we expect that on a call with so many people and so publicly, since we publicly put out the invite. So I just want to let you know that if you see that, my expectation of us is that we'll shower each other in love and messages of solidarity, because we're building a big we in this moment. And everybody gets to belong to our we if we respect one another. So remember that. And I want to thank the folks that made this call possible. I want to shout out Indivisible, our fam with MoveOn, the Working Families Party. I want to shout out the American Federation of Teachers and National Nurses United. I want to shout out the National Law Center Action Fund, my dear friends with Court Accountability. I want to thank you all for signing on to host this call. I want to welcome each and every single one of you for not regarding it robbery to be here with us tonight. Welcome to tonight's action call with MoveOn, the Working Families Party, Indivisible, and all of the other organizations that I just mentioned. We're so incredibly glad that you are here with us. And I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you who I was. For friends that I have not yet met, my name is Ashley Woodard Henderson, and I've been hosting the WFP Mass Calls, and I'm proud and honored to be here with you all tonight. You're going to hear from movement leaders that I trust with my life about what is happening in this moment, to get grounded and make meaning of what's happening, and then to also not just rah our feelings, though sometimes the choir needs preaching too. We're also going to give you concrete things that we need you to plug into doing right now. There's a lot of us on this call. I want to remind you that it's all of our responsibility to take care of each other and do the good work together. So keep introducing yourselves. If you're on YouTube, we expect the same of you. Now, before I go any further, I told you we have a special guest, and he's got a limited amount of time to be on with us tonight. So I'm going to introduce to some and just remind folks who already know and love this people's champion, one of Florida's finest, the incredible Representative Maxwell Frost. Representative Frost, thank you so much for being here with us. I see people losing their minds in the chat and with the emojis. Thank you. I know you're wedging this in between incredible amounts of work that you have committed to. So I want to quickly toss it to you to give the good people a good word tonight.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. There's no place I'd rather be. Hello, everybody. It's so good to be with everybody today. I'm gonna cut right to the chase because this is a difficult moment we're in. People were appalled. Many people are confused, wanting to know what to do, where to go, how to fight. And the first thing we have to do is make sure that we ground ourselves in the reason that we do this work in the first place. I got involved when I was 15 years old in politics because I didn't want to get shot in school. Over 10 years later, that reason is still front of mind for me and for so many young people in this country and for so many other reasons. So just remember, keep that story, whether it's your story or someone else's story, front of mind. When you see Trump do some bullshit, think about that story. When you see Elon talking about something, think about that story because that's what's going to ground many stories, but keep that with you because I truly believe this. Our greatest tool as organizers, our greatest asset is our story, the story of our community and where we want to go. And stories, it honestly is going to help us lead this movement and keep us grounded because in moments like this, it's easy to get distracted. There's so much going on. It's easy to lose sight. But I'm so happy to be here with y'all. The other thing we have to remember is we can't lose hope. And I'll be honest with you, that's been hard for me personally. Many weeks after Election Day, even to this day, it's been hard for me to wake up in the morning feeling hope, right? But something I've learned from people who've been married for a long time is that love sometimes is an emotion, but many times you have to actively choose love. And hope is the same way. Many times you're going to wake up in the morning, you're going to feel the hope. I think back to 2016, I'm working on campaigns. I was feeling the hope every day, waking up in the morning, going to Bernie rallies, going to different stuff. I was feeling that hope every day. But today, I'm not waking up feeling that hope. I'm going to be honest and vulnerable with you. I'm not waking up in the morning automatically feeling it. But I am actively choosing hope in this moment. So just remember that we all can and we all should actively choose hope because we've been here before. Right? We're not new to this. We're true to this. And when I say us, I don't just mean us as in us as individuals, but this grand mosaic of humanity and this large timeline of fighting for justice that we have the honor and privilege to be a part of and play a role in. Why must we fight? We have to fight for two main reasons. Number one, fascism thrives when we are divided, when working people are divided. And we have the ability to change that. Elected leaders, organizers, advocates, whether you do mutual aid, whatever you do, artists, clergy, teachers, we all have the ability to remind people that, of course, we have more that brings us together than separates us. And this is how the oligarchs, the billionaires, the fascists, and people like Trump keep us down, right? We have to remind people, you can't pay your rent, you don't have health care, there's gun violence in your community. The climate crisis is ravaging your community. And it's not because of immigrants. It's not because of trans people. It's not because of black people. It's not because of the people around you. Stop looking around for a person to blame and look up. Look at the people who for generations have been leaving us crumbs. This is how the fascists gain their power, by making us look at each other for who to blame instead of looking at them. And we have the opportunity, especially locally, to make sure that our neighbors, our family, the people in our church, the people in our school, the people we love know that we have this thing that brings us together, which is the fact that for too long, we haven't been given the means to live. You know, for so long, there's so many people on the student debt fight who will say, oh, well, young people, they're in debt because they're living beyond their means. And the response is, we're not in debt because we live beyond our means. We're in debt because we've been denied the means to live. And the fact of the matter is that has been true for generations, not just for Gen Z now or Gen Alpha for young people now. The second reason we have to fight is because authoritarians run rampant unless they are challenged. And this is why, throughout human history, dictators and authoritarians repress dissent. They're not doing it to exercise their power, they're doing it to protect their power. We have to realize that every time an authoritarian kicks out a news outlet from the press room, makes it so that way we can't understand the information that our government is supposed to and legally is supposed to provide to us. They're not doing it to exercise power, they're doing it to protect power. It means that they're scared, right? We can't just give people something to vote against, we have to give them something to vote for. And so when we realize that, we understand that through the power of voice, community organizing, and actual fighting and communicating, we have the ability to put these guys on the ropes. Um, Look, I'm in Congress. Things are very frustrating in Congress. We all know we're in the minority, but it's a two-seat difference here. So don't let anybody tell you that we have zero power. Don't let anyone tell you there's nothing we can do, because we can fight, we can educate, we can organize. There will be many moments over the next 2 years, and I say 2 years because we're taking back the House, over the next 2 years where they're going to need Democratic votes, and we need to stand 10 toes down and say no, absolutely not. Not a single bit of power for Donald Trump, for Elon Musk, and for these people who want to take the systems, the few systems and the few things that we've been successful in getting, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all these things. We're not going to let them take the few things that help us and completely get rid of them or privatize them. And so, again, we challenge authoritarians because it puts them on the ropes, and we ensure that we communicate and we lead with love locally, so that way we're not divided at home, and that's how we win. And when people come up to you and say, we can't do anything about this, we can't do anything about that, I think about Angela Davis quote, I'm no longer accepting what I cannot change, I'm changing what I cannot accept. And honestly, I'm about to get that quote blown up and put in my office. Because even myself, there are days that I've been waking up the last few days saying, what are we going to do? There's nothing we can do. I think it sometimes for a few minutes, and then I remember I'm not accepting what I cannot change. And if they could do it then, we can do it now. And we have to do it now. So either way, y'all, thank you so much for having me on. Choose hope. There are actionable things that we can do. I'm not sitting here and saying it's all rosy. It's going to be difficult. We're in a tough situation. It's going to be hard. I'm not going to say everyone's going to be okay, because not everyone is going to be okay. However, together, we can build our movement, come out stronger, and ensure, and not to get too much into partisan politics, but ensure that the Democratic Party does not repeat the same mistakes. And ensure that we build a coalition that's actually worth fighting for. And that's what this is about, right? Are we going to be for the billionaires? Are we going to be for the corporations? Or are we going to be for the people? And that's what this is about. Donald Trump built a multi-generational, multiracial, working class coalition built on bullshit and lies. And it's the great betrayal. And so we have the opportunity to not just, we're not going to go and tell people, well, it's what you voted for. I got to tell you, I think about things, and sorry, I'm talking too long. I'm about to stop. I think about things on how it would do on the doors. And I'll tell you, if I would knock on someone's door and I said, I told you so, the door would get slammed in my face. So let's stop this organizing of I told you so, and let's continue to lead with love. That's what our movement has that they'll never have. So either way, y'all, thank you for having me. This is about the fight for everything and everyone, and let's win this thing. God bless y'all. Thank you for having me on.
God bless you. We love you, Representative Frost. Thank you for being a people's champion. We see you. We've got your back. We're cheering you on. I see all the folks in the chat that are clapping you up. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Y'all, I don't know a better way to get grounded than what our good brother already said to us. So I'm not even going to waste a lot of time. I'm just going to pull some gems. He told you to ground in your why in this moment, right? 45/47. He and his little cronies, they're trying to keep us stressed out. Steve Bannon already told us that what they're trying to do is throw everything in the kitchen sink at us so we'll stay scattered and overwhelmed and believe that we're powerless to change anything. But our good brother, Representative Frost, told us to ground in our why. Let that be our center of gravity, to not lose hope, right? People are looking to us to remember that they can have faith, that ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people don't stop. He said, don't lose hope. He said that solidarity is the antidote to fascism, because they only thrive when we're divided and not working together and blaming each other for how we got here. He said we basically should turn down on each other and focus on challenging these authoritarians. He said, don't let anybody let you think that you're powerless and that there's nothing you can do, and to lead with love. We're going to ground in that tonight. Y'all, there's so many incredible speakers that are on tonight. I've also, the chat is flying, but I've seen some questions about like, what can we do? Is anybody planning direct actions? Who's trying to like go talk to their senators? Whatever. I see all of that in the chat. And because I have these great speakers on, I'm not going to tell you what's about to get announced on this call, but I am telling you there's really exciting things coming that are a plurality of tactics for you to be able to get down wherever you are, and like in a place where power is concentrated, so that we're not just doing symbolic actions, but we're actually giving some real pressure to build momentum in this season towards our great big comeback, right? Our people's comeback. It's coming. But I gotta set some more context with you before we start to get into all the details of the strategy, because I know that some of you have been coming to calls and getting, preached up, your heart, your soul, your body been loved up on. We gonna do that tonight, but we also gonna get to work tonight. You're gonna hear concretely what we need you to do, and I'm gonna push you to do it, to sign up for it tonight, to get us started in setting some of that context, to get us going, and to start the process of getting us into the strategy conversation, the tactical conversation. I get to bring up two people who I know y'all know, because when they show up to the mass calls, y'all lose your minds. I get to bring up a dear friend, two incredible colleagues, folks who you know. I get to bring up Leah Greenberg and Ezra Levin, who you know from Indivisible. Is Indivisible on the call tonight? If y'all in the call, just holler at me in the chat. Y'all always do every time. Shout out where you are repping from. We see you. We love you. Leah, Ezra, take us away.
Hey Ash, with you and with Representative Frost, it is hard not to choose hope. I got to say, I am feeling fired up. We're going to try to get into specifics though, about what folks can actually do. If folks don't know, I'm Ezra. This is Leah. We're married. That's why we're sitting so closely together. But we were also congressional staffers during the Obama era, and we used our lessons from fighting the Tea Party to reverse engineer a strategy for Dems in the Trump era. That's what Indivisible was founded to do, to demystify how Congress works so you all can actually organize and fight back effectively. Look, we're not here to tell you to be alarmed about Trump's attempt to assert unconstitutional control over federal funds, or this freeze and Elon Musk taking over Treasury. If you're here, you already know that we got to fight back. That's why you're here, right? So you're probably feeling frustrated that there's not more of a fight coming from our side. We feel frustrated too. And we want to set the stage for what that fight should look like and tell you what you can actually do that really has impact. That's what we want to talk about. So this is more than a virtual rally. That's not all that this is. This is also a meeting to learn what you can do. Action is what we need right now. That is what we need. So I'm hoping we can cover exactly what that action could look like and why it's so important. But first, Leah's going to go over what has happened this week. Leah, where do we stand?
All right, I'm going to quickly recap because there is a lot happening and we know that is part of Trump's plan. So I am going to do a very quick recap of what we know about the unfolding crisis here. So since Trump got in, his henchmen have been executing rolling purges of top civil service leadership across agencies. And on Monday night, the Office of Management and Budget, which is the budget directing office of the federal government, issued a memo cutting off all federal grants indefinitely. I cannot overstate how unconstitutional and radical a move this is. That is the money for educating and feeding kids, for healthcare for tens of millions of people, for domestic violence shelters and veterans programs and senior citizens and everything you care about. It was shocking. Now, there was immediate, massive public pushback. You rushed to contact your elected officials in every state. And initially, there wasn't much of a response from elected officials, but as the calls mounted, Democrats got braver and Republicans got more scared. Within 48 hours, the Trump administration had to retreat and claim that they were pulling back the memo. Within a day of after that, a federal judge issued an injunction barring the government from cutting off those funds, so saying you can't do this. Trump backed off. That did not mean he has given up. On Friday night, news broke that the White House staff reporting to Elon Musk, who is, let's just be clear, not a government employee, not elected by anyone, they were demanding access to the Treasury payment system, and civil servants who refused were forced to resign. And on Saturday, it was confirmed that the Treasury Secretary has given full access of that system, which disperses trillions of dollars to Musk's team. As we speak, we are getting reports from anguished civil servants across government who are seeing Musk's people show up demanding access to sensitive information. We do not know right now what Musk intends to do. He could be trying to cut off payments to programs they don't like. He could be stealing massive amounts of sensitive, confidential information for himself. We have no idea because there is no oversight and there is no reason to trust any of these people. Now, simultaneously, the architect of the federal funding freeze and of Project 2025, Russell Vought, is moving towards a confirmation vote by the Senate to be the head of the Office of Management and Budget, that same office that tried to cut off all funds. If he is confirmed, he is going to consolidate control over the federal budget. We have got Democrats pledged to vote against him. We need 4 Republican votes to tank the nomination. This is all a lot. It is very complicated in terms of how many things are happening, but the actual plan, the goal is simple. They want to break the government. They want to steal the funds that go to programs regular Americans count on, like education and healthcare, and they want to shovel that cash to their billionaire backers. So now we're going to talk about what we do, because they're hoping that they can do it without anyone noticing and kicking up a fuss.
Okay, so what are we going to do? Fair warning, 2 fair warnings. One, I tend to talk too quickly, and I'm going to try to slow down. Second fair warning, I'm going to say a lot. But we are going to give you this toolkit and explainer with all of the important parts. So if you miss something in the details, don't sweat it. You're going to get this in a follow-up. The other thing I'll say, everything I'm about to talk about is informed not just by our analysis of the shocking news that Leah just went over, but also by intel we are getting directly from members of Congress and senior staff who are not yet ready to talk on the record. So I want to start by saying, I want to be real. We don't have some magic stop the maniacs button that we can just smash and fix all this. That doesn't exist. The moment we're in is dangerous. It's frightening. And the plan that we're going to walk through right now is first step. This is what we can practically do to make a difference. It's not the whole thing. I also want to make clear, Trump is president. He's not king. Republicans have a congressional majority, but they're not all powerful. They want you to think that you have no power. That's not true. As we heard from Representative Frost, that is not true. We, all of us, have elected officials who have power and leverage over what happens next. They're people who are making choices about whether to fight back with everything they've got or whether to go along quietly. It's our job to raise the temperature right now. We need these people to do 2 things. One, stop Russell Vought, as Leah said, this guy who they want to lead the Office of Management and Budget. But 2, that's not enough. We also need them to use every tool in their toolbox to stop this constitutional crisis. I'm going to focus a lot on the Senate. And that's because that's where the confirmation of Russell Vought will go down. And it's also because the Senate in particular gives a lot of power to the minority. The Democrats are in the minority. It gives a lot of power to the minority to slow things down and make clear this isn't business as usual. And we want them to use that power. I'm going to also talk about what do you do if you got a Democratic senator or a Republican senator or both? There's something for you to do regardless. And with that said, I'm going to be honest, as a former congressional staffer, I was a former Democratic congressional staffer. Leah was too. And the reality is that over the last 2 months, we've seen a real lack of leadership and spine for many of these congressional Democrats. Obviously, Representative Maxwell Frost excluded. He's incredible. But there are Democrats who are out there rubber stamping Republican messaging bills like the Lake and Riley Act to, frankly, a muted response to the attack on birthright citizenship or the pardoning of January 6th protesters. It hasn't been a real series of profiles in courage, I'll tell you that much. On Friday, while much of this chaos had already unfolded or was like raising to a high temperature, most Senate Democrats voted for another Trump nominee. And Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, cut a deal with Republicans in the Senate to expedite votes on more nominees this week. look, this isn't the opposition we need right now. It really isn't. But I'm not here just to complain. We've got to ask ourselves, what could Democrats be doing that they aren't doing? And how can we, all of us, how can we encourage them to take those actions? Back when Lee and I were congressional staffers in 2009, Democrats had a trifecta, and we were working to push a universal health care bill through. And in response, Senate Republicans, who were led by Mitch McConnell, they circulated a memo that detailed all of the tactics available to the Senate minority to slow down the operation of the Senate and build opposition to the Dem agenda. That's what they did. Our roles are flipped now. We're in the minority, but our opposition is not yet unified. So here's my goal for Senate Dems. Pretend like you're Mitch McConnell. Ask what he would do. Think about the tools you can use to block, obstruct, raise the temperature, deny quorum, block unanimous consent, max out debate time, blanket opposition to nominees. Some of these tools, I'll be honest, they're a pain in the butt to use. It forces a senator to stand for a long time. You got to call off your weekend plans. You got to piss off your colleagues. But the tools are there. They're there if you're determined enough to use them. And if you're listening to this, you're like, what the hell is denying consent, unanimous consent? I'm not asking you to be an expert on these things. That's okay. We'll send out an explainer. Don't worry about that. You don't have to be an expert on Senate procedure to make these asks. Your credibility, your authority comes from the fact that you are a constituent. That's where your credibility and authority comes from. And I believe that Democrats, if they see the demand to act this way, they will. And I don't believe that because I'm some starry-eyed idealist. I believe that because this is exactly what we did 8 years ago to help Democrats find their spines the first time Trump came into office. Okay, what about Republicans? What about Republicans? If you have a Republican senator, Russell Vogt is a nomination they are actually really vulnerable on. He is the human embodiment of Project 2025. That Project 2025 is a 4% approval rating. They do not want to be attached to this guy. We need to flip 4 votes from the Republican side, and we've got a ton of private intelligence that says Republicans are actually really freaking out about this. Maybe they shift their votes. Maybe we pull them over to our side. Maybe that happens. And if they don't, they need to take political heat for this. And that's where we get to the how. So what do we actually do to bring that heat? You all have been flooding offices with calls and emails over the last week. That's great. Don't get me wrong. Keep that up. But it's not enough. We need to escalate. The way senators know that their constituents are actually really concerned and think there is an actual emergency going on is when people start showing up in person to their offices. Nothing, I say this as a former congressional staffer, nothing is more impactful than physically showing up at an in-state office with a group of people to ask, what is the senator doing right now? So this is my ask to you. With your local Indivisible group or with your local Working Families Party chapter or with your fellow MoveOn friends or with other groups, make a plan for when are you going to go to your senator's nearest state Senate office in state. You don't have to come to DC for this. And better yet, coordinate across the state to make sure groups are hitting every single one of those in-state offices from across the state. Bring signs, make it visual, let local press know that you're coming, let us know that you're coming so that we can get it more attention. Do not wait for somebody to give you permission. This is your sign. This is your sign. We need you to organize in your own community where you are. Now, I know DC doesn't have elected representation in the Senate. We would love to change that. That's not on the table right now. But if you want to be part of this fight, we have a different ask for you if you're a DC resident. Musk is inside the Treasury right now with his cadre of flying monkeys, and we don't know what they're doing. We can't let them get away with what they're doing quietly, though. So this is hot off the presses. We've been texting about it today. It's all settled. We are going to be at Treasury at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, and we'll drop the links to the social description in the chat. If you're in DC or in the DC area and you want to come there and be part of the action there, we welcome you there. For the vast majority of you, though, your work to do is in your own community, in your state. Remember, Trump has no mandate for this. What he's doing is not just cruel and corrupt and chaotic and unconstitutional. It's also deeply unpopular. And as long as we live in a democratic republic, doing deeply unpopular things for an extended period of time is really hard to sustain in the presence of organized opposition. Our job, all of our job right now, is to organize that opposition. We need your help to make sure we do it. Ash, back to you.
Y'all, give it up one time for Leah and Ezra for giving us concrete things that we can do starting right now. I'm just going to blaze through some of the questions that I've seen in the chat. Are you going to get these links after the call? Yes. Indivisible is going to email you. You're going to get the recording of this call. You're going to get, which is also on YouTube right now. You're going to get all the links to each of these action items. But just to sum it up really quickly, you're going to take action by moving from just calling and emailing your elected officials to scheduling in-person meetings with your senators. And you're not going to have to do that like by yourself. We actually have a toolkit ready to go that you are going to get, and you can register your event, and we're going to make sure you get that mobilized link. You can learn how the Dems can shut down Trump's agenda. We're going to send you the link for that. And then I don't know if you missed it, but for my turn up team in the chat, I've seen you all. You've been like, all this lobbying stuff, all this like talking to them. That's not going to get anything done. We need to turn up the pressure. We need to go protest. We need to rally. Well, guess what? You might have missed it. Ezra literally just dropped that there's going to be an action, a rally Tuesday, 5 p.m. at the Treasury building. We need to see your face in the place if you can get to DC and do that. So, just to be real, you've already heard a multitude of tactics that you could throw down on starting right now. I need to see some of these numbers going up. I need to see people signing. I need people in the chat telling me, yo, Ash, I clicked the link, I'm going. Or you need to tell me in the chat, I'm about to, I need to talk to my people, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I need a commitment here. We're going to keep coming to you with incredible leaders, though. I'm going to remind you about the calls to action that I need you to take up, but I need you to show some love for Leah and Ezra and the entire Indivisible team who helped make this call happen. While y'all are signing up for these calls to actions, I want to just remind you that you all are humans having a human experience, both on this call and in response to all of the terrible things that Donald Trump is trying to do to us, that his administration and the Broligarchy are trying to do. You heard Ezra and Leah set out the context of what the state of play is, but we want to get even more into the nitty-gritty of how this is impacting everyday people. And so the next few leaders are people who honestly are the ones that I go to for grounded leadership. They're the folks that are talking to working class people every day. They're the ones that are actually leading millions, hundreds of thousands of people. So I want you to hear from them how their members are being impacted and what they're doing in this moment. And the first incredible leader that I get to bring is Randy Weingarten. Y'all know Randy because Randy's been throwing down with the American Federation of Teachers for years. Randy, please come tell us what's going on. How are your people and what should we be paying attention to? What should we know about what's going on with your members? And if there are any concrete things that people can support them.
So Ash, I just want to reiterate, I'm going to be a teacher for a second. I just want to reiterate what Ezra and Leah said. So, the fear is real. The anxiety is real. Everybody feels it. Everybody sees it. And, part of this moment of time right now is to also be in community with each other, with our friends, with our, kids, with our grandkids, with our parents, with others. Do whatever helps us ground ourselves, because the chaos is the point and the cruelty is the point. So every time there's the chaos, we got to meet it with community. Every time there's the cruelty, we have to meet it with compassion. I'm not screaming this. I'm saying this in a way that I want everyone to hear, because they want you to be on edge and they want you to hide under a rock and give up. That is what all of this stuff coming all at once is about. And it's stupid and it will fail. It would have been far more strategic of Trump if he did it slowly and strategically, but he's not that kind of guy. It's all about the shock for him. Now, last week, and Ezra and Leah said it, something happened that made me believe we will win. And that is when they made the mistake of going full Project 2025 and freezing the entire federal budget. All of a sudden, it actually impacted people on the ground immediately. So people who had Head Start the next day didn't know whether or not they would have a place for their kids. The Medicaid portal went down in state after state. People had no idea whether or not they'd have doctor appointments. Same in terms of SNAP, same in terms of so many things. And as Ezra and Leah said, all of a sudden people started saying, wait a second, what the hell is happening? And there were calls not only to Democratic legislators, but to Republican legislators. There were calls all over. People saw it. There were tweets, there were skeets, there were all of these things. And as we fought back, the White House walked back. Now, the lawsuits and all of those other things are really important. The showing up in the way in which Ezra and Leah talked about, all of that stuff is really important. The most important thing, though, that I can say to all of you is the turn happened. The things that really mattered to people, people spoke up and the turn happened. We need to do that over and over and over again. And as I've seen in the chat, it has to start local. Now, in terms of schools, what's happening is I think tomorrow they're going to try to get rid of the Department of Education. They're going to try to fire a gazillion people. They're going to try to scare the bejesus out of people. We're one of the people that took one of those Doge lawsuits. What we're going to do is we're looking at that lawsuit first thing tomorrow morning to see if we can expand it to stop the kind of taking of private information that Elon Musk has no right to. And we're going to work with the AGs and we're going to work with retirees and we're going to work with everybody we can work with to see which of these portals really work to do what happened last week. And in terms of schools, I said this out at Ali Valshi this morning, and we had over 2,000 people, teachers and parents last week on a webinar. We are going to protect our children. That's what we're going to do in schools. We're going to do it. We did it during COVID. We do it when a gun rings out. We are going to protect our children. Nobody's going to come into a school without a warrant. And if they do, we have no obligation. In fact, we can't give up a child to somebody who walks in without a warrant. We're going to do everything we can. But this is what we need as the teachers of America, as the bus drivers of America, as the nurses of America. Ezra, I'm not going to, and Leah, I'm not going to be there Tuesday. I'm going to be in a strike in Oregon, a nurse strike, 5,000 nurses and doctors that we are doing right now. We have an obligation as activists to fight for a better life for people. And in the face of this fear, we need to give people hope. That we do together. In the face of chaos, we need to come together as community. As King said, chaos, our community. In the face of cruelty, we need to come together with compassion, and we need to do what Indivisible is talking to us about in terms of this constant fight back, bringing it local to make sure we're holding all our elected officials accountable. And look what just happened last week in Iowa, in a place the Democrats lost in November. They just elected a Democratic state representative by like 20 points who started talking about the economy. What's the price of eggs? What's the price of gas? What are these tariffs going to do? We can win this. We stay together, unified, parents and educators, community activists, together fighting for our future, for dignity for all, for opportunity for all, and for a better life. I am with all of you. I'll see you on these lines. I'll see you in congressional offices. I'll see you in local offices. We are with you.
Randy, we love you. Thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you to your members for sharing your leadership with us tonight. We're so grateful for what y'all are doing on the ground, and we will see you on the streets and on the lives as well. Thank you for being here tonight. Y'all show some love to Randy and all the AFT family. I saw a bunch of fellow teachers, retirees. I saw a bunch of folks that said that they are rocking with AFT. So y'all show some love to our leader. Now I get to bring up one of my sheroes, leader of one of my favorite unions. They've been throwing down in the South for a really long time, and they're friends of our movement. I get to bring to you the incredible Nancy Higgins from National Nurses United. Same question, Miss Nancy, like tell us what's going on the ground. What should people know about what's happening and what they can do about it?
Great. Hello, everyone. It's really good to be here in the community with all of you today. So now my name is Nancy Higgins, and I'm a nurse over 30 years. And I am the president of National Nurses United, the largest union professional association of registered nurses in this country. The past 2 weeks have been so terrifying for so many of us and for so many people. And I just want to commend all of you on this call for being here today, ready to fight back together. It takes courage and bravery to do that. I work as a nurse at a safety net hospital in New York City. Last week, when the Trump federal funding freeze was announced, it immediately caused mass confusion and stress. Our patients rely on Medicaid for their health care. They also rely on programs like SNAP and Meals on Wheels to ensure that they get the nutrition and support they need to stay healthy. As nurses, we had no idea what this funding freeze would mean for our patients, our hospitals, and for us as workers. It was terrifying. Overnight, states and healthcare providers lost access to the portal where they receive federal Medicaid funds. While most sites were back up on Wednesday morning, but the impact felt by patients, nurses, and healthcare providers is far-reaching. To give an idea of who was and could be impacted by this freeze, let me tell you about who relies on the stream of funding that supports Medicaid. More than 72 million people receive healthcare coverage through Medicaid. These patients are expectant mothers, seniors, low-income families, and children, as well as people seeking for long-term care and addiction support. Hospitals rely on this funding, with almost 35% of Medicaid budget going directly to hospitals. The hospitals that rely on Medicaid largely serve the underserved communities, low-income communities, communities of color, and rural communities. If Medicaid money is frozen, or if we see the funding cuts to Medicaid, which Republicans have proposed, people will die. Hospitals that rely on Medicaid could close, leaving communities without health care and putting nurses and other workers out of a job. State, local government, and nonprofit rely on grants from the federal government that would be frozen, like Meals on Wheels, which feeds more than 2.2 million seniors. Critical scientific and medical research only happens because of these grants. A federal funding freeze will shut this research down. While Trump administration rescinded their original memo that authorized this freeze, we know that is just a temporary relief. This administration has been clear about what its communities, commitment to cut critical federal funding to programs that working people rely on every day. Nurses, I will tell you, will not sit back and let it happen. We will not let this administration hurt our patients or communities. We have taken on huge hospital corporations every day. We will take on this administration in the same way. And we are so grateful to be in this fight with you together. We are going to fight back. And when we fight, we win. Thank you.
You already heard the message. There's no need to repeat it. My good sister said, when we fight, we win. It sounds like we got some folks ready to fight, whether you're fighting because you love nurses or you're fighting because you love people that are getting the care from those incredible nurses. We heard a bunch of folks in the chat saying, and there's other communities of folks we need to be organizing in the healthcare industry. Let's go get those PT and OT therapists. Let's go get all of the folks that are making our lives better by serving our communities through their vocation. If you were a part of the labor movement and you were on this call, I want you to shout out your union in the chat. I see some of y'all. I'm not going to get to call on all of you because it's so many of you, but I see SEIU, I see CWA. I think I saw some AFSCME folks earlier. I see IBEW. Y'all keep shouting out the unions. We love y'all. Thank you for prioritizing the care of working people and working families. We see you. We love you. Y'all, I also want to make sure that you remember that there are multiple actions that have been given to you now. You already heard from Leah and Ezra that we've got to actually go meet with these senators, right? You got to go meet them. You got to go be in person. If that's at their in-home office or you're trying to find them in DC, I need you to go talk to them. We've got a toolkit set up for you to do that, and you can register your event at the Mobilize link that we've dropped in the chat. Again, if you're on YouTube or Zoom and the chat is moving too fast for you to catch it, it's no biggie. We're going to also send it to you after the call, but I need you to actually commit and sign up to do it. You also can learn how the Dems can shut down Trump's agenda. We're going to make sure you've got the link to that as well. And then, again, folks been like, who's planning the actions? Who's doing the rallies? Y'all, there's one scheduled. It's this Tuesday. You can sign up for it. We're going to make sure you've got the link to that as well. It's actually up on Instagram. So if you're still using Instagram, you can share it there. Then last but not certainly not least, we've heard that you can actually call your senator and you can tell them to vote no on vote, and you can stop the next funding freeze. We've heard now from two incredible leaders who have said concretely how it's impacting their communities. So we need you to actually step up and make sure that you're saying stop the freeze. There's a petition that MoveOn also has. We're going to make sure you got that link in the chat as well. And for my friends who maybe missed it at the top of the call, this call is being recorded and all of these links will be sent to you after the call. So I don't need you to stress if the chat starts moving really quickly and you lose it. It's okay. We're going to pause the chat right now for you to grab it. But if you miss it for any reason or you need it later to send to your friends, we're going to make sure that you get it after the call wraps up. So be sure to check the calls to action from Indivisible, from MoveOn, and from WFP. We've got some more calls to action coming to you. So for folks that are saying like, yo, I'm hearing a lot of context, I'm hearing y'all talk about stuff we already know. Well, one, I'm glad you already know. That means you're engaged. But we might have some people here that are still trying to make meaning of it, and we're leaving no person of goodwill behind. We're bringing everybody with us. So we're making sure we're all starting from the same landing page. We're making sure that we all have access to these incredible leaders and their knowledge. We're learning together, but not just to be smarter together. We're learning together so that we can then take action together. We want to make sure that you get all of these links to the calls to action. You can get them in the chat and you will get them after this call. Now, without further ado, we still have some incredible speakers for you to hear from. Two incredible leaders who you all know because you've seen them on the mass calls, because you're members of their organizations, because you've seen them in the streets with our people, because they're consistent, because they love you. So I am so excited to hear from Maurice Mitchell, the national party director, my national party director of the Working Families Party. And I get to bring up Rana Epsing, our beloved from MoveOn, who both organizations are co-sponsors of this action call tonight. I want to start with you, Rana. We've had this overwhelming flurry of activity over the last couple of weeks, particularly since the inauguration from the White House. Tariff attacks. We've seen folks coming for trans people and queer folks. We've seen them talking about coming for people's right to choose what to do with their own bodies and body autonomy and abortion. We've seen the attack on diversity, equity, inclusion, and all these other things that are being thrown at us. Where should we be focusing right now?
Oh, great question. I mean, the whole point, many people have said, is to overwhelm us. I feel overwhelmed sometimes. But first, I'll say everything is worth fighting for. This is not about saying one fight is more important than the other. But we do have to sift through all of these attacks and figure out where do we have leverage and opportunity to fight back and slow it down or stop it, right? And so the opportunity we see right now in this moment is stopping these efforts to basically freeze and hold up the funding coming out of the federal government that impacts so many of us all across the country in every geographic area and every economic class, race, gender, you name it. Like this touches all of us. So right now, what we're asking folks to do is focus on this fight around the nomination of Russell Vought. Okay, Russell Vought is the architect of Project 2025. He quite literally wrote the 600-page book himself. So this week, there's going to be a full Senate vote on Vought, that's his name, for the Office of Management and Budget. That office manages the federal government's budget. And as we saw last week, if he's confirmed, he'll use the power of his office to remake this country into the manifestation of Project 2025. And he's going to start by cutting funding for endless number of programs that our country depends on. Programs that help keep preschools open, programs like Head Start that provide aid to hungry young kids, programs like Meals on Wheels that provide meals to seniors in need, Medicare, Medicaid, all of these things have been on the list. It's part of their plan, and they're going to be doing this in attempt to all the while push for tax breaks for the wealthiest of Americans in this country. The OMB memo this week that so many of us have talked about, it had Vought's fingerprints all over it. And that's why we need everyone here and everyone you know, we need your help to stop him from getting through the OMB's doors. So the pressure on your senators, whether they'll take meetings with you or not, but going to those offices and applying pressure on your senators, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, it is super important. It's actually strategic right now because you know why? A lot of what this new administration is doing is impacting people across the political spectrum. It's not just upsetting Democrats. It's upsetting Republicans in Republican states and Republican districts. It's upsetting business owners. It's upsetting Republican governors and Republican mayors and Republican state council members. So this is not partisan what they're doing. This is catastrophic and un-American. So this is a strategic fight and one that we think everyone, all hands on deck, we need to focus and hone in on.
Thank you for that, because we've seen a lot of questions in the chat about like, well, I, for example, live in a red state. My senator is not a Democrat. What can I do? So thank you for giving us that extra push that it's going to matter regardless of whether or not they have a D or an R beside their name. Thank you, Ron.
Yeah.
Mo,
And actually, can I just add, it's even more important and more possible that we could make a difference here because it's not just following along partisan lines. It's hitting all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Mo, I want to toss it to you next. So, I've seen people sharing their emotions in the chat. Some people are like, I am scared and I have a lot of fear. Some people have said they're not scared. I was like, I saw somebody, I can't remember their name. They were like, I have no fear. I'm mad. Like I'm raging.
Yeah.
But I think something that's consistent that we've heard, whether it was coming from our own community members or it was coming from like pundits telling us how we should be feeling, is that we're powerless, that it's just too much going on. The movement is, all over the place. We need to just sit down and we can't do anything about it anyway. Tell me what you would tell the folks on this call that allows them to reclaim their power a little bit.
Absolutely, Ash. And it's so good to be with my sister Rana. It's so good to be with you, Ash. And it's so good to be with the tens of thousands of you who are taking their time on this weekend to get information. And what I would say to any of you is what I say to myself every single day, right? Number one, and I'm going to lead off with what Rana said. She reminded us this isn't partisan. This isn't this fight doesn't fit within the neat binary battle lines that we often hear on the 24-hour news cycle. The left versus right, Republican versus Democrat, partisan, progressive versus conservative, MAGA versus woke, whatever you want to call it. This is all of us versus the billionaires. All of us. And so their actions are designed to destabilize us, to make us feel isolated, to make us feel as though we don't have power. That's a lie. The people always have the power. It's the workers who make this economy, not the billionaires, not the stockbrokers, not any of the hedge fund managers. It's the workers that, if they decide they want to strike, could shut down the economy. It's the workers, through their productivity, make the economy what it is. It is the voters. It is the people in your community who every day make our democracy, not the people who attempt to tell us what democracy is. It's not simply voting. It's all the things that we do together. And their actions, the flood the zone tactics, as many people have talked about, are designed as a lie to convince us that our power, our fight, our organizing doesn't matter. And we know historically that that isn't true, both in this country and in countries around the world. When people have attempted to either take directly from the people, the hard-earned labor or hard-earned money of the people, or the power of the people, when the people organize together and fight back, we're able to win. We know that from history here and everywhere else, that tyrants have overstepped, and they're clearly overstepping, right? But them simply overstepping is not enough. We need to take the action in order to take advantage of that overstepping. When so many people are looking for answers, sometimes people don't know. It's kind of like a high school dance, and there's all these wallflowers, and nobody knows who's going to be the first one to step out and dance. That could be you, right? There's something magical that happens when we start taking public action, right? Because it says that it's okay. It gives others permission to take public action. And so I'm really heartened to see the public action that took place last week. And they weren't prepared for that. They had to reverse themselves. And we need to keep that momentum going, and we will.
Yes, we will. Speaking of momentum, folks are still registering for this call that is happening right now. We're about to break 50,000. For my friends that are on YouTube, we see you. We love you. Thank you for being here. We wish you were over here in the Zoom so we could all be together, but technology. But if you got to that YouTube and you did not register for the call, I need you to register. We're going to drop a link. That registration is going to allow for us to send you the recording so you don't miss on all these golden nuggets that Rana and Maurice and our previous speakers have dropped, and so we can make sure you get the links to the calls to action. So if you're watching on YouTube, I need you to pay attention right this second. Go click that link so you can get registered, and we can make sure to stay in touch. Thank you, Mo. Rana, I want to come back to you. There's people like me who identify as strategy nerds. Folks are like, okay, you've made meaning, we've done the learning stuff. I'm hearing there's going to be rallies and actions, but like, where is the strategy? And I think some of us want to know, what's the inside baseball? Like, where should we be putting pressure, and what should that pressure look like that is meaningful and more than just symbolic?
Yeah, so there are lots of fights, again, as we've talked about. So every single fight, I might give you a different answer, but I'll say right now, big picture, in this moment, Donald Trump's been president for a little over 2 weeks, right? And we are in a period where people are trying to figure out what position they're going to take. We're trying to align the opposition, and momentum is building, okay? So we saw reports early on this year, the resistance is dead, blah, blah, blah. That's a lie. Engagement rates have gone progressively up every single day since Donald Trump took office. And as Ezra said, His agenda is wildly unpopular. And when you're doing that, you're only creating and fomenting more dissent. So we're building momentum this week. Going to meet with your senators, demanding they hear from you is part of that strategy to build more energy and more action as we move forward. So the pressure, so when we talk about this campaign to ensure that we stop vote from becoming the OMB director, pressure on your leaders is really, really important. You don't need to be a strategy wonk. You need to be you. And you need to go and talk to them and tell them how you are feeling and what you are seeing in this moment and how it concerns you. You need to be a regular human being. You don't need to nerd out on anything Ezra said or Leah said earlier. You are their constituent. And if they hear from enough of us, that rattles them, that moves them to behave differently. So if they're a Republican, they might be getting a little nervous that maybe I don't have this thing in the bag and people are really upset about the things that the president is doing. And maybe that's not in my interest to just completely fall in line. If they don't hear from you, guess what they're going to do? They're going to completely fall in line. If your senator is a Democrat, they need to hear from you. You need to agitate them. Tell them how concerned you are. This is a 5-alarm fire. Stop acting like this is business as usual. That inspires them to go back and connect with their other senators and say, we got to do something a little different. It is not your job to figure out exactly what they need to do differently. It is your job to pressure and agitate them and remind them who they are accountable to, which is you as their constituent. That is part of the larger formula. If we see more Senate or Democrats out there championing, really going to bat, not just tweeting, but doing the things to protect us, that foments more energy on the outside and more ability for us to mobilize into creative actions to push back together. Then we've got a partnership. Then we've got a unified opposition. Then we've built our power. So that's kind of what we're doing here. This campaign to stop Russell vote is part of that formula, and you are a critical ingredient.
Rona, what if I try to meet with my senator and my senator's like, I don't want to talk to you?
Well, what? That's a horrible senator. You can go in and they have staff that work there. You pressure their staff. You talk to their staff. You can, there's a bunch you can do. And that toolkit has everything you need to make it easy. So, and that is our job, is to make it easy for millions of people across the country to wield collective power to ensure that decision makers are making decisions in our interests.
Yeah, showing up is the goal here. Showing up is the goal here. Showing up is the goal here. Mo, I want to give you the last question. So, again, we've seen the messages in the chat. We've seen all of the social media chatter. There's a lot of desire for mass mobilization in response to what's happening right now. And so, you're one of the best organizers I know. You've helped organize some of the biggest, baddest mass mobilizations that I know. Do in-person actions like the ones that we're discussing tonight still work?
Absolutely. It all works. It all adds up. And, I like to remind people, I'm so happy that I heard Randy Weingarten mention community. Community is our way out. And so one of the things that happens is that when we show up and we do something like a mass mobilization, we're doing it with others. And that in itself is powerful. And that in itself, that movement is contagious. And when we stay together and we stay organized through actions like that, it tells us that we have some power, and it also tells our opponents, folks who want to take from us, that we have that power, right? There's nothing like direct action. There's nothing like a well-timed, well-planned direct action at the right place, speaking truth to the right set of powerful people who are trying to deny us the power that we have. And whether that's a mass mobilization or a small community gathering, right? Those in-person engagements, they have a way of trickling and then building. And I like to remind folks that shifts in popular opinion can happen very, very quickly. Shifts in society can happen very, very quickly. And often they start when regular people show public courage, like I said, which is what mass mobilizations and direct actions are. Once people see others fighting, again, they believe that that fight inside of them can be expressed. And nobody saw the movement for Black Lives coming, for example. Nobody saw many of our mass movements coming until it was on TV and it was front and center. And it started with a small number of very courageous people that decided that today was the day, and then it built, because public courage is courageous. And public courage has always been the little nucleus that has built into mass movements. And so I just want to encourage us, all of us, don't ask for permission. If you feel that inside of you, if you feel that kernel of courage inside of you, it's your job not to ask for permission, but to take action, and not to do it alone, but to do it with others. And not to do it chaotically, but to do it with a plan, which is why that guidebook is so helpful. And again, they've already shown that our public courage has them flinching. And when my opponent flinches, I don't just stop there. I go in, right? I've been training martial arts for years, and that training has told me that when I see that flinch, it lets me know that that big bad bully isn't as big and as bad as they profess to be. So if you aren't part of an organization, please join one. I invite anyone who's listening to join the Working Families Party. Join us today at www.workingfamilies.org, and you'll find more information. If WFP isn't the place for you, join another organization. Join MoveOn. Join Indivisible. Join an organization that you might not have heard, that I might not have heard of, but in your community, right? If you're a working person, find a union. And finally, if there are no organizations that fit your politics, your identity, your energy, then that means it's your job to build one today. The duty is ours. Go out and let's win.
I mean, when my party leader says, go fight, win, we got them on the ropes. We got to keep going. It's time to put the pressure on y'all. And I think we've already heard from Rana, from Mo, from Leah, from Ezra, from our incredible labor leaders that they flinched. They thought they were going to railroad this through, and that we weren't going to say anything, that we were going to be disorganized, we were going to be infighting and distracted. And we've got them on the ropes, y'all, but we've got to see it through. Before I remind you how to do that, I just want you to show some love to the homies. Give it up one time for Rana and the MoveOn fam, for Maurice and the Working Families Party. And if you rock with them, I need you to show it. They have been consistent in their leadership and giving us guidance and making meaning through the whole election cycle. So shout out to y'all. Thank you for being on with us tonight.
Thank you,
y'all. I know we're 9 after the hour and we're starting to lose some of you, but we believe in closing it in the same good order that we opened it. We're going to turn back on the chat. Y'all show some love to Rana and to Mo. If you're a WFP member or you rock with MoveOn, I want you to drop it in the chat. We want to shout out our teams. Y'all, again, the calls to action are not frivolous. They are thoughtful. They are informed by people who are talking inside and outside strategy, and it is multi-tactical. So you have the opportunity to get in where you fit in, where you are, or where you could go, which is to Washington, D.C. So I want to remind you that if you, like me, have Republican senators that maybe you don't feel cared for by, it doesn't mean we shouldn't show up. And if you've got a Democrat senator who you think shows up for you well, doesn't mean you can sit this one out. You got to keep putting the pressure on. So we've been emailing and we've been calling to the tune of hundreds of thousands of emails and calls, and that is awesome. Please keep that going. But some of us actually have to step up to build the momentum, to go to the next level, to actually put a stop to this funding freeze, y'all, and everything else, to get them to gum it up, right? We've got to step it up. One of the ways that we can do that, we can rise together in solidarity, is by meeting with them in person, showing up to their offices, frankly, whether they'll meet with us or not. And Indivisible has put together a toolkit that we are going to make sure you have the link to. We've dropped it in the chat several times, but we're also going to send it to you after the call. But we need you to register that you're doing it, so we know we can track our power and our impact. We need you to not feel like you can't do it because you haven't been trained to do it. We have a toolkit that will walk you through the steps. So I need you to commit to doing that. We also have an opportunity for you to call them and tell them to vote no on vote and to stop the next funding freeze. The third call to action is that there is a phone bank tomorrow with the Working Families Party that tells Congress don't cut off working families. It's tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to make sure you have the link for that. This is especially for my friends who are like, yo, I can't go to DC and I'm not really trying to be outside right now, but I can make phone calls. This is your opportunity. Tomorrow, we're going to make sure that you have all the details. You can sign on to MoveOn's petition against the federal funding freeze. We'll make sure you've got that link in the chat. And then I've seen several of you who live in these places shouting out your communities in the chat. But if you live in Alaska or Arizona, if you live in California or Colorado, if you live in Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Wisconsin, we actually, as Working Families Party, want you to fill out a swing district form. It's going to get you looped in with the Working Families Party and get you connected with folks that are taking actions right here, right now, today. There's so many ways, y'all, that we're going to be able to throw down collectively to spend time and to push the moral arc of the universe towards justice for our people. I want to thank every single leader of our movement that came and spoke and taught and shared with us tonight, that gave us both meaning in this moment, but also some balm for our wounded hearts. Thank you for leading us and helping us think concretely about what we can do in this time. I want to thank every single one of you for being stronger together on this call, even when we have dissonance and disagreement. Thank you for continuing to show up by the thousands to say we are not going to sit idly by and let authoritarianism destroy our communities. Thank you for being here. In all the noise, it is so incredibly helpful and important for us to focus on what is actually happening versus what is a distraction and learn how we can take action together. Thank you for not regarding it robbery to be with us tonight. I want you to make these in-person office visits. I want you to make these calls, send these emails to make sure VOT gets shut down. Make sure to sign these petitions. Make sure to join these phone banks. And we'll see you on the next action call. Y'all be well tonight. Thank you for following up on these calls to action. We'll get them to you. We'll send you the recording. Y'all have a great night.